Have you ever watched someone take down arrogance? With nothing but facts, calm, and undeniable truth. This isn't a courtroom drama. This is real, unfolding live, on the floor of Congress. In this video, you'll witness how Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, a former trial attorney turned freshman representative, completely dismantled a powerful defense official's entire narrative. All it took was 21 words. It wasn't a scream. It wasn't a spectacle. It was a masterclass. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been told you're too new, too young, too inexperienced to ask hard questions, then you need to see this. Stay until the end. Because what happens in the final minute will leave you speechless. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more celebrity undercover stories where truth speaks louder than power. The tension in the room was electric. Not loud, not chaotic, but charged, like the stillness before lightning strikes. It was a congressional hearing, yes, but this one felt different, as if everyone present could sense something was about to happen. Something unforgettable. C-SPAN cameras panned the room, capturing the sea of suits, papers, and tightly gripped pens. Seasoned reporters leaned forward, staffers whispered, committee members scanned their notes, and then Jasmine Crockett. She sat calmly at her place on the panel, a deep purple blazer draped over her shoulders like quiet armor. Her posture? Unbothered, her eyes locked in, focused. Directly across from her sat Kash Patel, 43 years old, former Defense Department official, known for being sharp, combative, and absolutely confident in his expertise. He adjusted his red tie, leaned into the mic, and with a tone dripping in condescension, began to speak. "With all due respect, Congresswoman," he said, though his voice implied anything but respect. "You're new to Washington." The words floated in the air, thick and heavy. "You don't understand how national security works. I've served at the highest levels of government, while you were still figuring out how Congress operates." Several Republican committee members nodded. Some even smirked. Patel's confidence grew with every word. "I've briefed presidents. I've managed classified operations. I've protected this nation while politicians played games." And then he dropped the hammer. "So, forgive me if I don't think a freshman representative should be questioning my judgment or my loyalty to this country." Silence. No one moved. No one blinked. All eyes turned to Congresswoman Crockett. Would she snap back? Would she lose her cool? Would she shrink under the weight of his credentials? The committee chairman shifted in his seat, ready to intervene. But Crockett? She simply lifted one hand, just slightly. She had this. Her face remained still. But to those who knew her, that stillness wasn't passivity. It was calculation. It was control. It was the quiet of a trial attorney preparing for a closing argument. Patel reclined slightly, a small smile forming. He'd played this game before, weaponizing his resume, dismissing oversight as political theater, and usually it worked. Usually. But this time was different. Crockett's gaze didn't waver, and for the first time, Patel didn't quite know what was coming next. The room may have looked calm, but make no mistake, a storm was about to hit, and when it did, it would leave Washington speechless. Stay with us. Because what happens next is a masterclass in speaking truth to power, and it all begins with one sentence, 21 words that changed everything. What Kash Patel didn't know, what many in that room had underestimated, was that Jasmine Crockett wasn't just another freshman politician. She wasn't there to play politics. She wasn't there to make noise. She was there to get to the truth. And if there's one place Crockett had always thrived, it was under pressure. Before Congress, she had spent 15 years inside courtrooms, cross-examining hostile witnesses, untangling lies from layered testimony, methodically peeling back spin to expose the facts underneath. She knew the tricks. She knew the dance. And she knew exactly how to let someone walk themselves into a contradiction. The key wasn't to push too fast. It was to let them feel in control. Let them overplay their confidence. So Crockett began. Soft, measured, respectful. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, she said, adjusting her microphone. Mr. Patel, I appreciate your appearance today. Patel nodded stiffly, bracing himself, but still holding that quiet smugness. He'd seen her in other hearings. He knew she came prepared, but he thought he was more prepared. Crockett continued. I'd like to discuss your statements regarding the handling of classified documents. Then, the first opening move. In your interview with Fox News on September 12th, you claimed that certain documents had been properly declassified. You said the appropriate channels had been followed. Patel didn't blink. Yes, he said confidently. I was involved in the declassification process myself. Everything was done by the book. No hesitation, no doubt. But Crockett didn't flinch, didn't argue. She just slowly held up a transcript. A single sheet of paper. And yet, she said, her voice calm, when asked about those same documents under oath in your deposition last year, you stated you had no direct knowledge of any declassification procedures being followed. Patel shifted in his seat. A subtle move, but telling. Context matters, he replied quickly. Those were different circumstances. Crockett tilted her head. Different circumstances? She repeated. So, the truth changes depending on where you're speaking and who's listening. Several Democratic members nodded slightly. A journalist scribbled frantically in the front row. Patel tried to pivot. That's not what I said, he shot back. You're twisting my words. This is political grandstanding. But Crockett didn't bite. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even change her tone. I'm quoting your own statements. Mr. Patel, in one setting you claimed direct involvement. Under oath you claimed no knowledge. Both cannot be true, and just like that. The foundation Patel had stood on began to crack, because Crockett wasn't arguing. She wasn't speculating. She was presenting his own words. It was the kind of courtroom strategy that didn't need volume, didn't need theatrics, just patience and precision. And Patel, he was starting to realize, this wasn't a freshman. Rep in front of him, this was an attorney, and he was under cross-examination. Patel's smile was gone, not fully, but it was weaker now. He leaned forward again, still trying to reclaim control. Congresswoman, these are complex national security matters, he said. With all due respect, you've been in Congress? For what, a year? The implication was obvious. You're too new. You don't belong here. You don't know what you're talking about. I've served in the Department of Defense, he continued. The National Security Council. The intelligence community. He waved his hand dismissively. I understand you're trying to make a name for yourself, but these gotcha questions only highlight your inexperience. A few Republican members smirked again. The chairman glanced at the clock. The room tensed. It was subtle, but unmistakable. This wasn't just political theater anymore, it was personal. And yet Crockett didn't react. No flash of anger. No defensive posture. No attempt to interrupt. She just waited. Let him speak. Let him dig deeper. When he finally paused, she looked down, reviewed her notes, and looked back up. Calm, steady, focused, Mr. Patel, she said slowly. I want to be clear. This isn't about making a name for myself. It's about ensuring that classified documents, some of the most sensitive secrets our nation holds, are handled correctly. Would you agree, she asked, that mishandling them could put lives at risk? Patel nodded. Of course, that's why proper handling is so important. And yet, Crockett said, flipping a page, we now know these materials were stored in unsecured locations. A bathroom, a ballroom, even a shower. Does that sound like proper handling to you? Silence. Journalists scribbled. Cameras zoomed in. A collective breath was held. Patel sighed. Congresswoman, you're repeating misleading media narratives. The facilities were secured per Secret Service protocols. Crockett didn't miss a beat. Secret Service protects people, she said, not documents. That's not their jurisdiction. As you well know. From the gallery, a retired intelligence officer nodded. He knew she was right. Patel tried again. This demonstrates your lack of understanding of executive security. Crockett gave a small, knowing smile. Let's make it even simpler. Then, she said, you certified. All documents were returned. But later, dozens more were discovered. How do you explain that contradiction? A reporter whispered. She's not letting go. Patel's jaw tightened. There was no contradiction, he said flatly. The statement reflected the documents we were aware of. At that time, Crockett raised an eyebrow. So you signed. Certification without verifying it was true? That's not what I said, he snapped. You're putting words in my mouth. I'm quoting your statements, Crockett replied. If that feels like putting words in your mouth, maybe it's because your words don't match your actions. And with that, you could feel it. The walls closing in. The witness. Flailing, the committee on edge. Because this wasn't a debate, it was a reckoning, and it was far from over. There comes a moment in every great courtroom drama when the witness realizes they're cornered, when the questions stop being polite and start becoming undeniable. That moment had arrived. Kash Patel didn't know it yet. But the next 60 seconds would change everything. He leaned in again, frustrated, rattled. Congresswoman, he said, you can play these semantic games all day. The reality is, you have no idea what you're talking about. You've never handled classified material. You've never worked in national security. You've never had to make the tough calls that keep this country safe. His voice rose slightly. A finger pointed. I have, he declared, for years, at the highest levels. So forgive me. If I find your amateur analysis both uninformed, weak, and offensive. The room froze. Even the chairman shifted awkwardly. Too far, he'd gone too far. But Crockett didn't flinch. She didn't blink. She waited. Let the silence stretch, let the arrogance settle in, and then she closed her folder. Deliberately, calmly. Mr. Patel, she began. You've spent considerable time today telling this committee what I don't know, what I don't understand. You've repeatedly invoked your experience to dismiss mine. She leaned in slightly, not as a challenge, but as a warning. But here's what I do understand. I understand that the law applies equally to everyone. I understand that contradicting yourself under oath raises serious questions about credibility, and I understand that when witnesses attack the questioner, instead of answering the question, it usually means they're hiding something. The hearing room fell completely silent. No coughs, no shuffles, not even a pen tap. She paused, let it hang, let it build, and then she delivered the line that would echo through Washington. Mr. Patel, she said clearly, steady, firm. I may be new to Congress, but I've spent enough time in courtrooms to recognize perjury when I see it, and enough time cross-examining defendants to know when someone is lying. To protect themselves, rather than serve their country, it was like thunder, but delivered with a whisper. No yelling, no grandstanding, just clarity, just truth. Patel froze. His mouth opened slightly. No response came. Cameras zoomed in. Journalists glanced at each other. A single whisper echoed from the back of the room. Oh my God. 5 full seconds passed. But it felt like a lifetime. Then a tremor, a ripple in Patel's water glass. His hand was shaking. He reached for it, took a sip, bought a few precious seconds. I resent the implication, he finally stammered. I've never committed perjury. I've served this country faithfully. But it didn't matter anymore. The power had shifted, the control was gone, and everyone knew it. The silence in the hearing room didn't fade. It cracked, then spread like shockwaves. Invisible but undeniable. What just happened wasn't ordinary. It was seismic. The moment Jasmine Crockett delivered her 21-word takedown, the hearing changed. And so did the tone of Washington. For the rest of that session, Kash Patel was a different man. No longer the confident insider, no longer the combative witness. He chose his words more carefully. His voice softened. And when pressed on specifics, he often said, "I don't recall." Staffers whispered behind notepads. Aides passed silent notes. Even committee members known for zoning out were suddenly locked in. This wasn't a routine oversight hearing anymore. This was history. Outside the chamber, the clip hit the internet in less than 10 minutes. Crockett destroys Patel in one sentence. Freshman congresswoman leaves national security official speechless. It was everywhere. Twitter, Facebook, TikTok. Instagram reels within the hour. Cable news networks were looping the exchange. Panelists debated it in real time. Some called it a masterclass, others a legal ambush. But everyone agreed. They'd never seen a moment quite like it. By noon, the hashtag Crockett vs. Patel was trending nationwide. Celebrities weighed. Former prosecutors broke down the clip frame by frame. Even late-night comedians paused their jokes to play it, calling it the moment arrogance met receipts. By the next morning, over 10 million views. Patel had canceled his planned TV appearances. His team declined interviews. His statement? "We're reviewing the transcript," but America already had. Meanwhile, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett was everywhere, invited on podcasts, quoted in editorials, trending in every political subreddit. But she never boasted, never grandstanded. When asked by reporters, "Did you plan that line in advance?" she smiled. "I planned to ask for the truth," she said. The rest took care of itself. In her district, constituents were calling her office, not to complain, but to say, "Thank you." One woman wrote, "I've never watched a hearing until now, and I've never felt so proud to be represented." Crockett didn't just speak for herself. She spoke for everyone who'd ever been underestimated, dismissed, talked down to. She didn't yell, she didn't interrupt. She just told the truth, and in Washington, that alone can be revolutionary. This wasn't just a viral moment, it was a mirror, a moment that forced Washington and America to take a long, hard look at accountability. Because Crockett's words didn't just sting, they struck at something deeper, the belief that powerful people with long resumes and loud voices can talk their way out of anything. That with the right tone, the right tie, the right spin, they're untouchable. But Crockett broke that illusion, not by shouting, not by shaming, but by presenting facts and asking simple questions. Questions that didn't need to be twisted, because the truth didn't need makeup. And when Patel ran out of deflections, when the contradictions stacked too high, all he had left was insult. That's when Crockett struck. Not with emotion, but with clarity. I know perjury when I see it. It wasn't just a line, it was a standard, a reminder that no one is above the law, not even a man who briefed presidents, and that standard is what democracy depends on. Legal experts weighed in within hours. Former federal prosecutors, defense attorneys, constitutional scholars, they all saw what Crockett saw. Those conflicting statements, said one legal analyst on MSNBC, are more than awkward. They could be criminal. By the end of the week, the Justice Department confirmed they were reviewing the transcript, not just for content, but for consistency, for truth. What started as one hearing, one exchange, had turned into a potential investigation, and not because someone shouted, but because someone listened, carefully, patiently, professionally, then asked the right question at exactly the right time. Crockett didn't just expose contradictions, she exposed the stakes, because if public officials can lie, if they can say one thing on television and another under oath, then truth itself becomes optional, and when truth is optional, democracy is in danger. That's why this moment mattered, not just for Crockett, not just for Patel, but for all of us. It reminded us that oversight isn't a sideshow, it's the front line, the firewall between power and abuse. And it reminded us of something else, a truth even more powerful than Patel's resume, that facts still matter, that words have weight, and that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it cross-examines. Some politicians have a moment, Jasmine Crockett had a breakthrough. What started as one sentence became a statement, a declaration that she wasn't just another name on a congressional roster. She was a force. The day after the hearing, she walked through the Capitol halls with the same calm stride. But now, heads turned, aides nodded respectfully. Colleagues whispered, reporters followed. She didn't seek the spotlight, but it found her anyway. Cable news anchors played her clip. On loop, editorials called her the most prepared in the room. On one talk show, a host said, she didn't just challenge a witness. She redefined how congressional questioning should be done. Her inbox filled with interview requests. But she turned most of them down, because this wasn't about fame. It was about focus. I didn't come to Congress to trend, she said in a brief press gaggle. I came to hold people accountable. That clarity, it resonated. Constituents flooded her office with messages, not just praise, but stories. One woman wrote, I've been underestimated in my job for years. Watching you reminded me to stand tall. A retired attorney emailed, that was the cleanest cross I've seen since law school. At town halls, people stood to applaud, and not just her supporters, even some independents, even some from the other side, said they respected her composure, her command of the facts. It wasn't about partisanship, it was about principle. Crockett wasn't shouting into the void. She was cutting through the noise. She began to receive invites to panels on legal ethics, to law school guest lectures, even to military forums. They didn't just want her presence, they wanted her voice. And still, she stayed grounded. This isn't about me, she said at one event. It's about the truth, and making sure no one gets away with hiding it. Behind closed doors, party leaders took notice. Here was a freshman, with courtroom discipline, with public communication savvy, and with unshakable moral clarity. She wasn't just asking questions, she was shaping the narrative, and unlike many who rise too fast, she had the experience. To back it up, 15 years in law, a lifetime of fighting for equity, a backbone forged in real battles, not just political games. In a city often fueled by ego, Crockett moved with purpose, measured, prepared, unapologetic. She wasn't waiting for permission. She was setting a new standard. And for many watching, across the country, she wasn't just a congresswoman anymore. She was a symbol of what it looks like when competence meets courage. And this was just the beginning. Some moments go viral, others go deeper. This was both. Jasmine Crockett didn't just silence a witness. She awakened something. In the halls of Congress, there are speeches every day, statements, sound bites. But this wasn't a soundbite. It was a signal, a line in the sand, drawn with precision, not volume. I know perjury when I see it. Those 7 words hit harder than hours of grandstanding ever could, because they weren't shouted. They were earned, backed by years in courtrooms, by truth, by preparation. And in a world flooded with noise, truth spoken softly can still thunder. The clip kept circulating, not just among political junkies, but among teachers, activists, everyday people. In high school classrooms, debate coaches replayed the hearing. This, one teacher said, is how you ask the right question at the right time. In law schools, professors used it as a teaching tool. Watch her pacing, her tone, her discipline. She didn't attack, she exposed. Across social media, people shared their own stories. I've been the only woman in the room. I've been the youngest voice at the table. I've been told I don't understand. And Jasmine Crockett spoke for all of them. This wasn't just about a national security official or a classified documents hearing. It was about something more timeless, truth, and the courage to speak it, the ability to remain calm when someone tries to provoke you, to hold the line when someone tries to blur it. It reminded America that the law isn't about titles, it's about accountability, and that power without honesty is hollow. In the days that followed, Crockett deflected personal praise. This isn't about me, she said. It's about the truth, and whether we still believe it matters. 1 week later, an older gentleman approached her at a town hall. He wore a veteran's hat and carried a folded printout of her quote. "I've been voting Republican for 40 years, he said, "but watching you in that hearing made me proud again. Not because of politics, but because of principle." That was the real legacy. An era defined by polarization, Crockett's moment cut through, not by being loud, but by being clear. She didn't just hold a witness accountable. She reminded a nation that the truth still has power and character still matters, in boardrooms, in classrooms, in courtrooms, and yes, even in Congress. Because in the end, it's not always the loudest voice that wins. It's the one that's right and ready and fearless enough to say what needs to be said, exactly when it matters most. What we just witnessed wasn't just one woman standing her ground. It was every quiet voice and every overlooked question, every person who's ever been told to sit down, finally rising. Jasmine Crockett didn't win with volume. She won with clarity and courage. She reminded us that in a world built on power games, there's still power in truth, in preparation, in speaking without fear. If this moment made you feel something, inspired, empowered, maybe even outraged, then don't keep it to yourself. Share this video. Tell your story in the comments, because your voice matters too. And remember, you don't have to be loud to be heard. You just have to be ready when the moment comes. Because when it does, the truth will always speak for itself. Subscribe now for more stories that prove one thing: no title, no tie, no talking point can outlast the truth.